Hi people, it's Archivist here, and today we're going to be defeating Oxide once again, this time on Electron Avenue. I think this is one of the longest tracks in the entire game, especially when you're online and you're getting battered with items as well. It can feel like it goes on for an age, but thankfully it's a really fun track as well. Not only does it look really nice and bright and colourful, I can only imagine how amazing this looks on OLED. Well, it's also a track that really promotes Blue Turbo, and I have to say that when I was first going through each of the tracks, this was the first one that really suggested to me the potential of Blue Fire, especially because of these initial bits where it's very easy to hold on to Blue Fire as you're going around some very simple turns, and it's a very wide track at first as well, so if you're still starting out and playing the game and you've just got a basic grasp of how to use the drift boost system, it's a great thing to get you started. But then where the track gets a bit harder is what we're coming up to here. So there's this blue tunnel coming up, and it is pretty damn difficult, even with a tight turning character, to not bump the sides. If you bump the sides, you lose all your reserves, which means Oxide has a much greater chance of taking over from you. So the best piece of advice I can give you is a simple one, yet something that you do just have to practice and test with yourself, is hopping. So you'll notice as I go around some of these corners, I'm hopping a hell of a lot. And this can be a way to very subtly give you a bit more turning power without having to commit to a full drift. And some of those corners are so tight that if you do go into a drift, you will just slide into the side anyway, particularly if you're choosing a more balanced or even a heavier character. So, very similar to some of the other tracks I've already talked about, I think of this track in two parts. There's this bit where you can very easily build up your reserves, and I'd say that this bit continues even around here. It gets a bit harder, but it's relatively straightforward to hold on to your reserves at this point and hit perfect turbo drifts. And then if you come around here, a bit harder because it starts to get straighter, so drifting becomes less natural. But then again, it's definitely this tunnel where you have to get some practice in, because unless you start hopping a bit, it's so easy just to slam into the side and lose your Blue Fire. And although the moment that tunnel ends, it does actually give you another Blue Fire initiator, because you lost all your reserves previously, it's much harder to actually maintain it than if you've got all the reserves you built up from that first part of the track. So it's a map that, okay, to be fair, there are loads of places where you can get Blue Fire, and even if you aren't paying too much attention, you could spend over half the time in Blue Fire mode. But at the same time, if you want to truly maintain it for the entire track and thereby pretty much guarantee not only defeating Oxide but by a healthy amount, you have to be quite careful in the latter part of this track, because it gets incredibly tight to do those corners. And I have to say, even when I was doing this recording and I was doing the blue tunnel, I always sort of clench as I get to that point, because even though I know it works with the hopping, you sort of feel as if you are going to hit the sides. So again, we're going to do it one final time here, going up the straightaway, then up to the blue tunnel of doom. But then we're going to do a bit of hopping, just a little bit, just avoiding the sides, just avoided it. I mean, that was like almost touching. But now we can use the hopping technique to get around the rest of the track. We're going very fast by this point. And then just up here, around this final tight corner. And then, of course, well, it goes without saying, avoid getting hit by the blue lasers. And then that is how you defeat Oxide on Electron Avenue.